Doctor Salvador Borrós, director general d'IQS URL, doctor Jesús Vilar, secretari general de la Universitat Ramon Llull, pare Enric Puig, president del patronat d'IQS URL, doctor Miquel Gassiot, rector de la URL, vicerectors, directors generals, doctora Ana Belén Cuenca, padrina del doctor MacMillan, degans, vicedegans, professors, membres d'òrgans de govern, diputada del Parlament de Catalunya, representants d'institucions públiques i privades i, sobretot, i el més important de tot, familiars, amics i amigues del doctor MacMillan, professors, estudiants i personal d'administració i servei. Senyores i senyors, s'obre la solemne sessió d'investidura del doctor David MacMillan com a doctor Honoris Causa de la Universitat Ramon Llull. Té la paraula el doctor Jesús Vilar, secretari general de la Universitat.
Acte de nomenament del doctor David William MacMillan com a doctor Honoris Causa de la Universitat Ramon Llull. La Junta de Govern de la Universitat, a propòsit de IQS School of Engineering, en la sessió del 16 de novembre de 2023, va prendre l'acord de concedir el grau de doctor Honoris Causa de la Universitat Ramon Llull al doctor David William MacMillan.
Es prega a la doctora Ana Belén Cuenca, responsable del Departament de Química Orgànica i Farmacèutica d'IQS, que surti a buscar i acompanyar el nostre doctorat. Benvingut a la Universitat Ramon Llull. Sisplau, ara té la paraula la doctora Ana Belén Cuenca perquè presentarà els mèrits del seu patrocinat, el doctor MacMillan.
Doctor Salvador Borrós, director general d'IQS, doctor Jesús Vilar, secretari general de la URL, pare Enric Puig, president del patronat d'IQS URL, vicerectors, directors generals, degans, vicedegans, vicedeganes, familiars i amics i amigues del doctor MacMillan, GIN, professors, estudiants, personal d'administració i serveis, senyores i senyors tots. Habitualment, la llengua vehicular de la nostra universitat és el català, però, si m'ho permetin, per facilitar que el professor MacMillan, present aquí avui, pugui seguir còmodament la lectura de la Laudatio, procediré a utilitzar tant l'anglès com el català a partir d'aquest moment. Moltes gràcies. Professor Sir David MacMillan, if I may, and with all due affection, Dave from now on, was born in Belsill, a small town in eastern Scotland, today a 35 minutes train ride from Glasgow, and an hour if you took the Argyll line in the Caledonian Railways in the 80s. He received his degree in chemistry from the University of Glasgow, where he first discovered something that only becomes clear hindsight. The disciplines that shape our lives are not chosen by us. They find us, captivate us, and if you're lucky, as it seems to be his case, you can never escape their spell. In 1986, reading the organic chemistry book Fessenden and Fessenden every day on the metro to the uni, probably without realizing it, the young student MacMillan was training his spatial vision and learning to decipher, slowly as the organic chemistry is being learned always, the language of this beautiful chemical discipline, becoming for him, and I quote literally, one of those subjects that it was almost like breathing to me. It was also in 1986 when Professor Ernie Colvin criticizes him for preferring the Scotland-Cyprus football match over the stereochemistry class. I quote again, he took me aside, you can do that, and anthemers are important. And then I was like, are they? I didn't know at that point. And an ironic twist, creating molecules with an spatial arrangement of their atoms, and doing so promoting the formation of only one of the two possible mirror images, known as the enantioselective synthesis, will be years later the passion to which Dave has dedicated a big part of his professional life and the discipline that led him to the Nobel Prize in October 2021. Dave, you may know that chemists at IQS, since its founding in 1906, have been very interested in the asymmetry of organic molecules. The founding father of what it was at the time the Ebro Chemical Laboratory, now the Institut Químic de Sarrià, IQS, the Jesuit chemist and priest Eduardo Vitoria Miralles completed his doctoral thesis with a very well-known Belgian organic chemist, Louis Henry, the discoverer of the nitro-aldol reaction that bears his name. In the original version, this reaction involved the addition of a nitromethane anion to a carbonyl of a ketone or an aldehyde, thus generating a nitro-aldol species that, if avoids the elimination process, results in the generation of a chiral molecule. De fet, el que es considera el primer doctor honoris causa de la Universitat Ramon Llull, investit a l'any 1978 per la nostra institució, va ser el professor Vladimir Prelog, Premi Nobel de Química a l'any 1975 i pioner en proporcionar-nos eines i regles per entendre i anomenar el fenomen gairebé màgic de la quiralitat. Vladimir Prelog va ser el primer a dur a terme la separació cromatogràfica dels dos enantiòmers de la base de Trobe. I d'entre aquests químics en químiques apassionats de l'IQS, també hi havia un jove entusiasta, el doctor Sebastià Julià, que juntament al seu equip de flamants estudiants de doctorat presents avui, donaven voltes a la idea genial de que una simple molècula orgànica composta per només 10 residus aminoacídics pogués arribar a emular el comportament sofisticat i màgic d'una enzima o d'un complex catalitzador metal quiral. en concret portant a terme una reacció d'epoxidació asimètrica d'olefines electrònicament deficients, que nosaltres avui coneixem com l'epoxidació Julià-Colonna. But I think I'm digressing. Let us continue with Dave a little bit. The young and enthusiastic chemist that Dave was around the 1990 began his doctoral studies under the supervision of one of the greatest chemists ever, Professor Larry Overman, at the University of California, Irvine. Among other achievements, Dave accomplished the challenging first total enantioselective synthesis of 7-diacetoxyl-thionine, a diterpene member of an interesting family of marine corals. Professor MacMillan Dave, later from 1996 to 1998, completed a postdoctoral stay with the much admired Professor David Evans at Harvard University, working also in some asymmetric catalysis-oriented project applied at this time to one of the prototypical reactions if you are working in asymmetric catalysis. In asymmetric catalysis or synthesis, the Mukayama-Aldol reaction, a reaction that, in one or another way, almost every organic chemistry professor find an excuse to include in the syllabus. In 1998, a beautiful trained Dave with renewed enthusiasm and full of energy began his independent career at the University of California, Berkeley. It was at Berkeley that the groundbreaking concept of the asymmetric organocatalysis took shape. This was all thanks to the brilliant idea of forming an electrophilic immunospecies that, thanks to the presence of not even a few amino acids, just one amino acid derivative, was able to activate many substrates. And let me just illustrate the young Dave's excitements at that time with just an anecdote. And a student of his, during a presentation in a conference, shared with us this. I wasn't fully conscious about the importance of these initial results until one day Dave followed me to the NMR run lab at 2 a.m. in the morning just to see the results of the last experiment firsthand. Then this powerful concept developed by Professor MacMillan along with other researchers such as Benjamin Lees, co-recipient of the 2021 Nobel Prize in Chemistry, Professor Carlos Barbas, who Dave held in high regard, or Professor Carl A. Jorgensen, just to name a few, has served to activate innumerable lists of substrates, including then inducing them to participate mainly in highly demanding enantioselective synthesis in a general and predictable manner. In addition to starting his research career at Berkeley was also a very dear place for Dave. It is at this university that he meets other brilliant young chemists who accompany him in his career. Among them, I would like to highlight particularly the interaction with Professor Jean McCusker, a great expert in inorganic photochemistry, with whom Dave began discussing the antenna capabilities of certain photosensitive mineral complexes. This discussion certainly helped lay the groundwork for later developing the enormous arsenal of photo-assisted organic methodologies with which he has illuminated the scientific community. In 2006, Dave moved to Princeton University. I hear that this had something to do with Jean as well. And then became the A. Barton Herbert Professor in Chemistry, and he is currently James McDonnell Distinguished Professor of Chemistry. There is no doubt Professor Dave MacMillan is one of the world's leading figures in the field of synthetic methodology, focused on discovering and developing new chemical reactions for more efficient, selective, and sustainable bond formation. Dave is a firm advocate of the concept of catalysis, a game-changing tool that saves lives, ecosystems, and without which we could not live or even breathe. Throughout his career and while leading his team, he has devoted enormous effort for the search of new catalytic concepts and their possible application in thorough synthesis of very complex molecules and very active pharmacological compounds. Throughout his career, I was putting in the paragraph and then I'm coming. El seu particular interès per les reaccions catalítiques en cascada, que són processos químics catalítics encadenats que permetin accedir a estructures moleculars avançades, la seva passió per la sinergia que presenten les reaccions fotoredós i metalofotoredós que se serveixen de la llum visible per permetre la transferència d'electrons entre catalitzadors fotoexcitables i molècules orgàniques o entre catalitzadors fotoexcitables i complexos de metall de transició, junt amb una llarga llista d'eines químiques revolucionàries, revelen la singular intel·ligència química d'en professor MacMillan. Dear friends and colleagues, Dave has countless achievements behind him as the great scientist that he is indeed. But he has also a fantastic and compelling charisma. He has a great sense of humor. He's a fantastic teacher. He's an even better mentor. David can turn a chemistry class into a rock concert. He is passionate about explaining well a chemical concept. He is a teaching being and an exceptional communicator, you will find out. David, dear friends, is a human being capable of feeling equally honored for having received the Nobel Prize as for being able to record a short video of a few minutes congratulating a retired professor from IQS for his contributions, as for having been able to offer an online chemistry class to a group of students from the Taras Shevchenko National University of Kiev, directly affected by the sad conflict in Ukraine. Dave is someone who freely recognizes and honors his humble origin, and from that ability to freely place himself in front of his or her interlocutor, he elicits respect for the person and the personal history of those that he encounters. He chooses always to thank and remember what the people with whom he shares life have gifted him: his family, his teachers, his students, his colleagues, his mentors. That's the human quality of the professor that we are having the honor to have with us today. To the young scientists, he reminds the importance of believing what they do, or having an internal matrix. If you believe that is cool, go ahead. Think about a simple question, but powerful one. He insists in the need of remain focused, sticking to the point. He encourages us to not forget that we must continue doing experimental science, collecting deeply and appreciating the data and evidence from the laboratory. In short, he teaches us to freely and deeply respect what we do, to love our respective disciplines. If one look at the definition of Honoris Causa in the dictionary, I did, one can read, Honoris Causa is a Latin phrase whose meaning for the sake of honor, a quality that leads to respect for our colleagues and for ourselves. Respect for our colleagues and for ourselves. Dave is a Nobel Prize winner in chemistry and is, without a doubt, one of the greatest chemists of our time. But above all, Dave is an enormous human being who lives in and practices deep respect for his college and for himself. He is a human being that lives respecting other people and respecting himself. Dave és Premi Nobel de Química i sense cap mena de dubte un dels millors químics del nostre temps. Però damunt de tot, Dave és un ésser humà enorme que viu en i exerceix el respecte als seus semblants. És un ésser humà que viu i exerceix respectant i respectant-se. La meva intuïció em diu que hauria de callar aquí i baixar. Professor Dave MacMillan. Dave, por causa de honor, floor soon will be yours.
moltes gràcies per les seves entranyables paraules que crec que avui hem compartit tots. Sisplau, en correspondència al seu padrinatge, pot acompanyar el doctor MacMillan a l'escenari? A proposta d'IQS, School of Engineering, URL, i amb l'aprovació de la Junta de Govern i del Patronat de la Universitat, heu estat anomenat Doctor Honoris Causa, en testimoniatge i reconeixença dels vostres rellevants mèrits. En virtut de l'autoritat que m'ha estat conferida, us faig lliurament d'aquest títol. I també us lliuro el birret llorejat com a símbol i distintiu antiquíssim i venerat del magisteri. Porteu-lo com a corona dels vostres mereixements i estudis. Rebeu l'anell, que en l'antiguitat tenia el costum de lliurar-se en aquesta venerada cerimònia com a emblema del privilegi de signar i segellar els dictàmens, consultes i arbitratges de la vostra ciència i professió. Rebeu també aquests guants blancs, símbol de la puresa, que han de preservar les vostres mans, signes uns i altres de la distinció de la vostra categoria. I, perquè us heu incorporat a aquesta universitat, rebeu ara, en nom del seu claustre, l'abraçada de fraternitat dels qui s'honoren i es congratulen d'ésser els vostres companys i companyes.
Okay, well, I will begin by thanking everyone for that. First of all, Anna, for that incredible speech. It was very, very special to hear that. I have many other thanks that I want to give, but I'm going to wait till the end of my speech to do that. I will say this is going to be a 25-minute speech. I thought I would do it slightly differently. I'm not going to read from a piece of paper. What I thought I'd do is actually show some slides. Now, it is a tremendous honor for me to become a member of the Ramon Llull family. To be here is very, very special. And what I thought I would do when I talked to people, they said, maybe you could talk about who you are, how you got here in your life, and maybe discuss some lessons that you've learned along the way. So I thought that's exactly what I would do. So I'd talk about who I am, how I got here, talk about some lessons, and at the end of it, I'll discuss what it means to me to become a member of this family. That's what I'm going to do. So hopefully about 25 minutes. If it gets too long, start waving, okay? Or shake your hats or something, okay? But okay, so where am I from? So I'm from Scotland, and this is a map of where Scotland is. And that's maybe insulting for some of you that I'm telling you where Scotland is. But trust me, no one in America knows where Scotland is. No one. But there's a really easy way to remember where Scotland is. There's a very simple way to teach people in America. I just tell them Scotland is always on top of England. Always on top of England. It's really... I apologize to any English people in the audience. Okay. So I'm from Scotland. I'm from Belsill, which is a small steelworking town. It's a steelworks just outside of Glasgow. My father was a steelworker. My mom was a maid. And that's where I grew up. And this is some photographs of me as a baby. Don't worry, I'm not an egomaniac. I will come back and explain later why I'm showing you these photographs. But as a kid growing up in Scotland, I was a very average, very normal kid. I really didn't think about science, really, ever. I really just thought about football and soccer and music and things like that. A very normal kid. This is us on our yearly trip to the local beach in Scotland. The beaches in Scotland are not like the beaches in Barcelona. They're very, very different. I still love this photograph because my parents have put badges on all of us that say, "Take me, take me." What parents take their children to the beach and say, "Take me"? Anyway, so this is us at the local beach. But when I was a teenager, my brother did a remarkable thing. He did something really remarkable. What he did was he decided he wanted to go to university. Now, you might think, well, what's remarkable about that? But we didn't know anyone who'd ever gone to university. No one from our village, no one from the town next door, no one from our high school had ever gone to university. And it was very controversial. My mom and dad thought he was just being lazy and trying to avoid going to the steelworks, which is probably true, to be honest. But he decided he really wanted to go. So he went and he got a degree in physics. And that was wonderful. But the day he got his degree, he got a job. And his job, the salary paid more money than my father made after 30 years in the steelworks. And at that moment, my mom and dad came to see me and said, "You are going to university." So the biggest decision of my career was not made by me, it was made by my mom and dad. So I went off to university and I went to do physics. I was told I had to do physics. That was the formula. And I was terrible at physics. I was so bad at physics and I really didn't like it. The lecture class every day was 8 o'clock in the morning, which I did not feel happy about, going to an 8 o'clock in the morning class. And it was a very cold lecture theatre. And in Scotland, it rains a lot and the roof would leak. And so you'd be in there at 8 in the morning with the water coming on your head. And I really was not happy. I tried to leave university. I tried to get a job. But I was so bad at interviewing, I couldn't even get a job. But fortunately, as part of the curriculum, we had to start taking organic chemistry. And when I first took this lecture class, it wasn't a class, it was more of a revelation. Because I realized I absolutely loved this subject. It was not something I expected. So as Anna mentioned, every day I would take the metro back and forward to the university and I'd read this textbook every day. And I started to realize that this was the passion. This is the subject that I really, really loved. And I quickly changed my major. And I tell people at that point, chemistry became one of my loves, but it also became my passport to the world. It allowed me to take you all over. And as we all know in this audience, that's what education, that's what it does. It becomes our passport to the world. So from physics, I moved over into chemistry, and I was so fortunate to join this amazing group. And I graduated with them in this chemistry lab in 1989. Now, I like to tell this story because my brother is the greatest role model I could have ever wished for. If it wasn't for my brother, I would not be standing here today. But if I'd followed his path, I would have been miserable, and I certainly would have failed. But I realized by going off in my own direction that actually allowed me to become who I am today. So the lesson that I always tell my students is, it's incredibly important to learn from others, but you always have to follow your own path. Both of those are equally important when they're both equally true, and it's something that I really lived by my whole life. Now, when I finished my degree in chemistry, I decided I really wanted to go to the USA. I really wanted to do a PhD. It was really nothing to do with science. I was just in love with like American TV programs like Star Trek and Starsky and Hutch and things like that. I really loved and I loved American sports. I really wanted to do that. So I was trying to figure out, how do I do a PhD in the USA? And I had no idea, and I was very, very naive. So what I did was I saved up money and I bought these things. These are called airmail envelopes. This was before there was email. I am very old. So this was before email. And I saved up and I bought 5 of these and I sent them off to 5 people in America and asked them, could I do a PhD with you? And after about a month or 6 weeks, I was no response. So I saved up, I got another 5, sent them to another 5 individuals, 2 months, no response. I got to 15, 16, 17, 18 letters with absolutely no reply. But on the 19th letter, I received a reply. And this was remarkable. It was from this individual. His name is Hal Moore. He's the dean and a chemist at UC Irvine. And he sent me back a letter. And he was basically making fun of me. The letter made fun of me and said, you can't get a PhD in America just by sending letters to them. That doesn't work that way. And he sent me this application form and said, fill out this application form from UC Irvine. Now, if you're in Glasgow, Scotland, where it really does rain every day, and it really does, and someone sends you this application, here's a guy on a skateboard wearing shorts. I mean, this was unbelievable. So I filled out the application form and sent it off, and I was accepted. And I went off to California. I left Glasgow on a raining Tuesday morning, and I arrived in Southern California on a beautiful Tuesday evening. And it was just the most incredible experience. I had to find an apartment, and so I went to the local apartment agency, and this lady took me to this apartment complex, and they showed me, they said it has 4 swimming pools, it had 6 tennis courts, and she said it has 8 jacuzzis. And I looked at her and I said, what is a jacuzzi? And she said, it's fantastic. It's a big hole in the ground, you fill it with hot water, bring some beer on a Friday night, you'll have a great time. And she was absolutely right. So this is me in a jacuzzi. Now, so there's an interesting point to all of this, which is, how do you go from this situation where I'm in Glasgow to sitting in a jacuzzi in Southern California? And I realized that part of it was because of this amazing gentleman, Hal Moore. But the other part was because of this 19th letter where I eventually received the reply. And one of these things that I realized, the lesson I learned from that was what kept me going. Because even though I kept sending letters and nothing was happening, the only thing that got me to America, which was my dream, was nothing more than just determination and trying to stay positive when everything else was failing. And this has always been one of the things that I tell my students all the time. You can't, especially as an academic, you can't let failure and rejection get you down. And failure is really just another word for experience. And staying positive when it looks like your dreams are not working is probably the best skill set that I honestly have, is to just stay positive as much as humanly possible. Okay, so in Irvine, 1990, as Anna mentioned, I was incredibly lucky to join the lab of one of the greatest organic chemists who's ever lived, Larry Overman. And when I said earlier about learning from others, this is exactly what I did. I tried to learn as much from this human being. He's just an absolutely phenomenal scientist. But more than that, he's just an incredible person and an amazing mentor to everyone in his lab. He really looks after people, which is just incredible. So when I finished my PhD, what did I want to do? I decided I wanted to do catalysis. Now, most people here probably know what catalysis is, but if you don't, what catalysis does is if you look around this room, absolutely everything you see is made by a chemical reaction. And what catalysis does, it makes all chemical reactions easier, faster, but most importantly, it allows chemical reactions that were previously impossible to become possible. That's what it really does. Now, you can ask yourself, is catalysis important to the world? This is one example. This is the global population of the Earth. And you can see over 2,000 years, it's pretty stable, pretty baseline. But at the beginning of the 20th century, it takes off to become 8 billion people. As it happens, you could not have 8 billion people on our planet if it wasn't for one catalytic reaction, the conversion of nitrogen over into ammonia. You might wonder, why is that important to have 8 billion people? And it's really simple. We need it to have food. We would not be able to make enough food for the world without one catalytic reaction. Now, there's a really interesting trivia point in this, which I always like to tell people, that 50% of all the nitrogen atoms in your body right now, in your proteins, in your DNA, in your organ, in your tissue, 50% of those nitrogen atoms come from a factory in Germany. If that doesn't freak you out, I don't know what will. I think that's a most incredible statistic. These are some other statistics, but I'll just point out that 35% of the world's GDP at the present time is actually based on catalysis. So catalysis is pretty important. Now, in 1996, I'll come back to why in 1996 in a moment, there were really two areas of what's known as asymmetric catalysis. There was biocatalysis using enzymes, the catalysts of life, and there was man-made catalysis. This is using metal catalysis that was developed in a laboratory. Okay, so in why 1996? Well, I wanted to learn about this area, and one of the greatest experts in the world was at Harvard. I decided I had to go to Harvard to join the lab of Dave Evans. Dave Evans, like Larry Overman, one of the greatest organic chemists who ever lived. Unfortunately, he passed away last year, but the field of organic chemistry would not exist to the extent that it does without this professor. And in Dave's lab, I learned an incredible amount, and I learned about all these different types of metals and all the different ways you could use them for catalysis. But while I was learning this, I had to use one of these contraptions. And I don't know if you know what this is, if you're not a chemist, but this is a glove box. And the reason you use a glove box is when you're working with metals, often the inside of the glove box is a different atmosphere than the outside. And the reason is, if the metal was on the outside in our normal environment, it would not exist. It would decompose or do other things. So you have to use it in the inside of a glove box, but that means practically you'd spend hours and hours and hours every day in a glove box. And after 2 years of having my arms stuck in a glove box, I started to think there's got to be a better way than this. And I started to think, why are we spending so much time in a glove box every day? All right, now I'm not going to make this too chemistry, but this is a typical metal catalyst. And even if you're not a chemist, even if you're not, you can sort of look at this typical metal catalyst and you can see you can break it down the middle and you can really break it into two parts pretty easily. On the right-hand side is the metal. Now, some cases, but certainly not all, metals can be expensive, they can be toxic, they can be difficult to work with. In many cases, they're just not sustainable for our planet to use metals. But on the left-hand side, this is the organic molecule. And organic molecules are inexpensive, they're safe, they're sustainable. Like you and I, we are predominantly organic molecules. And so whenever you're finished with these molecules, they go right back into the life cycle. They're completely sustainable. So we started to think, why don't we start to use the organic molecules as the catalyst instead of using it in combination with the metal? So we set out to test this, and actually the first name we came up for this at the time was organocatalysis. And the name makes sense. It's organic, and catalysis becomes organocatalysis. So I landed a job in 1998 as an assistant professor, and this was at Berkeley. And I really love this photograph because it's my first group. This is our first year. This is a Friday night, and it's 10 past 10 on a Friday night. And you can see this young lab in there working hard, trying to make a difference, trying to have an impact. And we knew we wanted to do this thing called organocatalysis. So this is the first organocatalytic reaction we ever performed. And this is, to the chemists in the audience, this is a very famous chemical reaction. It's called the Diels-Alder reaction. And it's when you take these two molecules and you combine them to make the one on the right. But you'll see above the arrow, this would be an organic molecule where you would normally use a metal to actually do this. And when we tried the reaction for the first time, we go at the bottom, it says not racemic. That means the reaction worked. It actually worked. Now, Dave Evans, my advisor from a postdoc, told me, it was a terrible piece of advice, but he told me, one of the things you want to do is never show your students that you're excited about the results because they won't respect you. Terrible advice. Okay, so we got this result and the student told me about it, and I remember saying, thank you very much, walking into my office, closing the door, closing the blinds, and I jumped up and down for 5 minutes. I was like so happy. But so at that moment, we realized that we were off to the races and we had to develop this even more. This was the first real catalyst we developed, which we allowed us to do 3 chemical reactions, 3 different ones. And then we developed what's called a second generation catalyst. And now we're really off to the races. There was literally hundreds of reactions that we're actually able to develop at that point. Now, I want to point out something which is really important. And that is the following, is that while there's been literally hundreds of reactions that have been developed over these years, there's not really any point in developing lots of chemical reactions unless ultimately you really want to try and benefit the outside world. And there's many applications of organocatalysis. You can use it to make polymers, you can use it to degrade polymers, you can use it to make flavors, you can make it to use fragrances all over the world. But without question, the number one application has been for medicine. So this is talcegipan. 3% of the world's population suffers from migraines, so this would be a migraine treatment. And I like this form of catalysis because they use the chemistry that we developed, this type of catalysis, to actually make the key molecule which is associated with the one here. But there was another application of organocatalysis that we did not expect, that we did not see coming. And that was, it's really cheap, it's really inexpensive, it's really affordable. It's using molecules you can find all over our Earth. And because of that, this type of catalysis began to be taught and research began to be performed in this area all over the world, literally all over the world. Now, people often ask me, where is the next big idea going to come from within organocatalysis? And I always say, I have no idea. But I know one thing. It's not going to be based upon who has the most resources or who has the most money. It's going to be based on who has the best idea. And for someone of my background, that is something which is extraordinarily important to me. It's something I massively care about. All right. Now, I've talked about our contributions to organocatalysis, but there are so many people who've been involved with organocatalysis, and some of the world's most key contributions have actually been from this department. And in my Nobel lecture, I showed this slide, and you can see that most people here, I have photographs. But Professor Julia, who is in the audience today, we looked for his photograph for literally 2 months on the web, and we could not find his photograph anywhere. And even subsequently, we tried to find the photograph, couldn't find his photograph anywhere. So yesterday, I cornered him, and I said, can I please take my photograph of you? And he said, yes. And the person who took the photograph only took one photograph. And this is the photograph they took. Like, so I like... So I love this photograph, but I want to take another one where his eyes are open. But fortunately, Anna sent me this photograph, which is a phenomenal photograph. And this is back when they were actually making these key discoveries. And I think this is an absolutely amazing photograph because it represents really what happens in science. We're sitting in lab and we're talking about what we love to do best, which is really amazing. Okay, so 2021, October 6th, I find out I won the Nobel Prize. And a question that everyone asks me, and I'll finish off in the last 3 minutes here, or 4 minutes, is to say, people always ask me, how did you find out? How did you find out you won the Nobel Prize? And I always find it's an interesting little story to tell people. And basically, it was October 6th, 2021. And it was 5 a.m. in the morning. I was lying in bed sleeping. And I started to feel an elbow in my ribs. There was an elbow in my ribs. And it was my wife. And she's hitting me. And she goes, your phone keeps buzzing. Your phone keeps buzzing. Can you get to your phone? And I was like, no, I'm sleeping. So she gets up, goes round the bed, picks up my phone, looks at it, and then decides because it's buzzing, she's going to move it further away to the window ledge so that it won't annoy us while we're sleeping. But as she's sitting down, she says, by the way, it looks like someone in Sweden's trying to reach you, and Ben List is trying to reach you. I was like, what? So I was like, all right, so I'm groggy. So I wake up, and I look at this, and this says, I don't know if you can see this, but this says, Dr. McMillan, please call me Goran Hansen. And I'm like, Dr. McMillan? Who the hell is Dr. McMillan? All right. And then the other part of this was a message from Ben List, and you probably can't read it, but Ben basically texts me, like, Dave, wake up. And I call him, and he says, Dave, we did it. And I was like, what did we do? And he says, we won the Nobel Prize. And I'm like, no, there's no way that happened. And so I was completely convinced that this was one of my students playing a practical joke, because my students, I have an amazing relationship with my students, and we do this kind of thing to each other all the time. And my brain is thinking, this is terrible because they've told Ben List this. And that's not very nice. That's not a very nice thing to do. So here, I don't know if you can see, but I bet Ben $1,000 that this is a joke. And he was actually very nice because he said, $1,000, that's great. We can go and have dinner together, which is very generous. And dinner together. And I said, no, going back to sleep. Cheers. And I went back to sleep. I literally went back to sleep. So about 40 minutes later, I wake up. I go down to the kitchen counter because I want to see who won the Nobel Prize. And I open up and I go to the New York Times website. And when I go to the New York Times website and open it up, what do I see? I see this. I see this thing. Okay, now I look at that and I remember looking at it and think, well, that kind of looks like Ben List. But who the hell is that? Right? It's like, this is a terrible photo. So people often ask me, what was the moment like when you realized you had won the Nobel Prize? And I say, I was on one level, I was very excited. But on another level, I was quite offended, actually, by this. Anyway, so an amazing series of things happened, and I'm going to tell you two last stories. So this is a slide which I absolutely love, because this is where I received the Nobel Prize medal, and I'm with my family from Scotland, and obviously my family from America as well, and that's me receiving the medal. But the reason I'm telling you this story is because there's a part of it which I really love to tell people. As you can see here, I'm wearing a kilt, and this is a kilt, and I think people in Spain know this well. A kilt is the Scottish national costume. It's basically a skirt that men wear, right? And it's made from tartan. And I've never worn a kilt before. So I was like, I won the Nobel Prize. I've got to get a kilt. So there was no one in America sells kilts. So I went to the tailor, and the tailor took my measurements and sent them back to Scotland. They sent it back to Scotland, and we waited. And the day of the ceremony, they sent the kilt back to me. And so that morning, I put the kilt on, and it was really, really tight. It was really, really tight. It was so tight, I could hardly walk in it. Right? So my wife called it a pencil kilt, which I thought was pretty funny. But so they gave me the medal, and I had to shuffle up and get the medal, and then turn to the press, and then shuffle back again, like that. And then that night, there was a fancy gala where they were having dancing, and I couldn't go dancing because I had on this really tight kilt. So we get back to the hotel that evening, and I'm really annoyed. I'm really angry and frustrated. And I'm complaining about this to one of my friends, Christina Pramel. And she looks down at the kilt and says, wait a minute. And she looks, and there's a thread sticking out. And she pulls the thread out. And it turns out it was a thread that had been put there for shipping to keep it in shape to come to America. And as soon as she pulled the thread out, the kilt went, boom, like that. So the reason I love this photograph, this should be my highest moment of intellectual achievement. And all I see is the world's biggest idiot, right? So the take-home message in this is failure will always keep you humble. That's an incredibly important point. And then the last part, I want to go back to this, and you might wonder why I showed you these photographs. But the other part I like to show about these photographs was after I received the Nobel Prize. The Nobel Prize people called me up and said, can you send us photographs of you as a baby? And I said, why? Why do you want photographs of me as a baby? They said, well, we want to put it on our website. It's like, why do you want to put photographs of me on your website? That has nothing to do with my scientific contributions. They said, doesn't matter, we just want them. I said, okay. So we went to my home with my wife, and we went through everywhere looking for photographs of me as a baby, but we couldn't find them anywhere, couldn't find any photographs. So I contacted my sister back in Scotland, and she looked around, and she found these 3 photographs, which are now on the Nobel Prize website. Okay, But over time, I've started to realize that this is actually one of the greatest practical jokes ever played. Because I've started to realize this is not me. All right. This is my sister. Okay. Which is a very Scottish thing to do, actually. And she recently confessed to this, and she loves it because her photograph is on the Nobel Prize website. All right, so I wanted to finish with that because this is a lesson that I always tell anyone who will listen to me. That the biggest thing I've learned in life is to laugh every single day, and that laughter with family and friends is without doubt the greatest source of wealth there is in life. And it's incredibly important to enjoy life because of your interactions with your friends and family. So with that, I always finish off also mentioning when we got the Nobel Prize, there's a money that comes with the Nobel Prize, and we decided we should not hold on to the money, so we created a foundation. My mom and dad passed away a few years ago, so we created a foundation in Scotland, and this is for kids, basically, or teenagers who are trying to get to university who do not have money. This is for underprivileged teenagers to try and get to university, or for underprivileged people to stay in university. The BBC actually ran this story and it went kind of viral, which was great because lots of people from all over the world started donating to it, which has also been great. So every year now we give out a grant in Scotland to help different universities bring in underprivileged kids, which has been absolutely wonderful. The other part is every time I give a talk, I always have to thank the key people who actually allowed for me to do what I do, which is my family. I always like to thank my daughters over here. This is our family up on the Harbour Bridge in Australia. And, I always say, chemistry and education is the passport to the world. And that was an amazing experience we had. And this is my wife, who's in the front row, who has been absolutely incredible. She's just an amazing human being. And again, I would not be here if it wasn't for her. But I do want to finish off by thanking the people involved with this. To be here, to come and receive this degree has been absolutely remarkable. As you can probably tell, I'm very proud of my Scottish upbringing. I'm very proud of being from a working class family. But every time I come to Barcelona and every time I go to the greater region of Spain, I find people who are just exactly the same. They're just who they are. And they're real people. And they enjoy life, and they enjoy love, and they enjoy laughter. And being able to spend time with people here is just so special because it really does feel like you're connecting with people in a real human way. So to come here and to hear Anna's words was incredibly special to me. I can't begin to express what that actually means. But it really is so amazing for me to receive this doctorate. I will begin by thanking Dr. Josep Rom for also having a great attitude. I can tell in the small amount of time I've met you, you have a great attitude towards life, which is fantastic. I have to thank Dr. Salvador Boros, who's been so nice to us from the moment we stepped into IQS. And then lastly, I have to thank Dr. Ana Belén Cuenca, who is just a remarkable person. I think everyone here knows that. But since we arrived, from the first 45 minutes of sitting in the car with Anna, she met us at the train station. She gave big hugs to my wife, and it's just been amazingly warm. But just a great person, cares about the institute, cares about the students, cares about the people. And I can't thank you enough, Anna, for doing this to us. But lastly, I probably went long beyond my 25 minutes, so I apologize for that. But I'm really, really proud to become a member of the Ramon Llull family, and I really look forward to interacting with all of you as we go forward in the future. Thank you so much.
Bon dia a tothom. Ara és el moment de realitzar el tancament d'aquest acte, d'aquesta concessió d'aquest doctorat honoris causa de la Universitat Ramon Llull. Bàsicament és el moment de donar les gràcies. En primer lloc, al doctor MacMillan per haver acceptat aquest premi. Our people, our community of teachers are proud to have accepted EQS engineering proposal. To give you this award and accept you as a member of the faculty. Our new colleague follows the long list of honorary awards from the university and the EQS, initiated by Dr. Vladimir Prelog, who have been named Honorary Doctor of Ramon Llull University. So, Dr. MacMillan, congratulations for this distinction and many thanks for doing us the honor of accepting it. I'm going to make my speech in Catalan, but you have a copy of English translation. Sobretot cal felicitar, a més del nostre nou membre de la comunitat, cal felicitar l'IQS, cal felicitar la comunitat que formeu tots plegats, perquè gràcies al seu director general, gràcies al seu degà, gràcies a tota la comunitat de professors que heu proposat al doctor MacMillan com a doctor honoris causa de la nostra universitat, nosaltres tenim l'honor de compartir tots plegats l'honor de l'IQS. I per tant us agraeixo la voluntat d'organitzar aquest doctorat honoris causa. Avui premiem un doctor honoris causa. Com ha dit abans, ella, un mestre de l'honor. A Espanya celebrem aquest títol des del segle XV, des de l'any 1462. Sabem que aquest premi destaca a qui és docte, qui és mestre de la ciència. Però què significa ser mereixedor d'un honor? Honor és un concepte complex, però tots podem compartir la idea que parlem d'una manera d'actuar, del resultat d'un treball, que té un impacte positiu en la societat. L'honor és fill de la virtut de treballar i treballar perquè la utilitat del nostre treball sigui un benefici, una manera molt generosa d'honrar els altres. Segons el poeta Ovidi, la virtut creix en ser lloada. Els romans eren experts en dissenyar festes per celebrar l'honor. Nosaltres no en sabem tant, però també volem lloar la virtut del treball del doctor MacMillan, mitjançant aquest premi, i per això el fem a través d'una sèrie de símbols. El birret, que visualitza el coneixement, l'anell, que permet formar documents de la seva ciència, i els guants blancs que recorden l'ètica professional del mestre, un científic, un acadèmic. A vegades la gent opina que els professors universitaris pequem de supèrbia intel·lectual. És un estrany virus. Tants anys de recerca i classes obren la porta a una predisposició cap a l'arrogància, a demostrar-li constantment als altres que sabem més, que pensem més, que som més intel·ligents. No sé si és cert o senzillament, com a grup social ben definit, nosaltres també ens mereixem un estereotip, perquè els guionistes de cinema, sobretot, puguin representar els doctors universitaris com personatges que saben de tot. Som tan superbs com el tòpic que ens representa? No ho crec. Totes les imatges populars tenen un punt de saviesa, però aquest acte d'avui, és la demostració que el professorat també és alumnat. El que fem avui és manifestar en veu alta que el doctor MacMillan és algú a qui respectem, algú que ha aconseguit arribar on nosaltres no hem arribat. Aquest homenatge, que ens serveix per a recuperar la nostra identitat d'alumnes, per gaudir d'alguna cosa que ens estimem profundament, l'oportunitat d'aprendre. I això ens ho permet convidant el doctor MacMillan a ser membre de la comunitat de la Universitat Ramon Llull. És un gest doble. Estem reconeixent que volem aprendre i alhora estem dient que volem compartir la nostra petita comunitat de professors amb un nou col·lega. Algú, el treball del qual ens ensenyarà coses noves i ens permetrà arribar molt més lluny. La Laudatio ja ha estat realitzada amb gran encert per part de la doctora Ana Belén Cuenca. Gràcies a Ana Belén per aproximar-nos a la figura i el treball del nostre nou doctor Honoris Causa. No em toca destacar els mèrits científics del professor MacMillan. A mi em toca destacar què significa per a nosaltres, el que significa MacMillan per l'IQS per la Universitat Ramon Llull. Fa més de 100 anys que l'IQS va decidir adoptar una missió, la de convertir-se en un centre d'educació superior centrat en la química i les seves aplicacions. Fa més de 100 anys que l'IQS treballa per a la ciència i treballa per al país. Catalunya és un país de forta tradició industrial i la nostra voluntat és ajudar al fet que aquesta tradició industrial continuï existint i creixent. Per aconseguir-ho es requereix una certa mentalitat de treballador de base. Cal ser químic, però amb el caràcter d'un miner. Cal cavar molt profund i a vegades sense molta llum per aconseguir el nostre objectiu. Cal probablement tenir la paciència d'un miner escocès. El nostre nou membre de la Universitat Ramon Llull ens ha mostrat 3 actituds que són una gran lliçó per a nosaltres. La perseverança, la positivitat i la paciència. Perseverança. Crec que el nostre nou doctor Honoris Causa l'ha explicada de manera contundent i clara. Cal insistir en el camí de la vocació. A vegades la vocació et ve a veure. T'enamores d'una disciplina, però l'amor és fràgil. És fàcil sentir dubtes, creure que hi ha més camins. La fidelitat a una aventura, la tossudesa i la perseverança són els camins per aconseguir la meta desitjada. Però el camí té moltes dificultats i existeix el fracàs. No es pot negar el fracàs i el doctor MacMillan ens ha donat una classe de com gestionar-lo. No podem evitar fracassar, el que podem evitar és que el fracàs ens destrueixi i aquest és el camí de la positivitat. I la paciència? El doctor MacMillan no ha parlat directament de la virtut de la paciència, però tot el seu treball en parla, perquè només els que són tan apassionats, només els que abracen la vida i el treball com una aventura positiva i transformadora, tenen la paciència d'ensenyar, la paciència d'explicar i explicar fins a fer-se entendre. És la paciència del mestre que el nostre premiat ens ha demostrat avui. L'any 1302, Ramon Llull va escriure: la paciència en els inicis plora i al final riu. El doctor MacMillan ens recorda el valor de la paciència que riu. No és la lliçó d'un químic, és la lliçó d'un gran professor i comunicador. L'acte d'avui és una festa i una classe al mateix temps. Aplaudim els mèrits d'un científic excepcional i celebrem amb el major homenatge que pot celebrar una universitat que aquesta persona ens acompanya. I alhora és un acte d'humilitat. Ens recordem a nosaltres mateixos quant camí ens queda per recórrer i quan hem d'aprendre per a poder fer el que millor sabem fer: ensenyar. Aquest premi també és un gest cap al futur. És un missatge a la nostra comunitat de professores i professors per treballar millor, amb més tenacitat i seguint l'exemple del professor MacMillan. I és un missatge als nostres estudiants perquè sàpiguin cap on mirar, de qui aprendre i com arribar-hi. Tots coneixeu la frase mirar més lluny sobre les espatlles d'un gegant. Se sol atribuir a Isaac Newton, però és molt més antiga, probablement d'època romana. Significa que gràcies al treball dels nostres predecessors, nosaltres podem veure més lluny. Gràcies, David, per ajudar-nos a pujar al plaer a la teva esquena i permetre'ns veure molt més lluny.